Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Zach coming to you from Washington, D.C., and today we are discussing No Time for Design, Am I a Fish? Talking to the stage manager, and Let Go of My Tungsten Lico, damn it! All on Light Talk.
And this is a fish called Wanda. This is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. That's right, today it's Zach, Steve, and me, David, or the Fish. And we are here with episode 254. Welcome, everyone. So things are really hopping at Light Talk Central. That's right, we're really busy. This show will be airing the day before the Super Bowl. So today we're actually doing our Olympics Opening Ceremonies show. And next week we're going to be welcoming multi-Emmy Award winning designer Dennis Size on the show to talk about the broadcast lighting of the Super Bowl. And then we're like 3 weeks from our anniversary show. So we'll figure it all out at that time. So anyway, let's get started with news. That's right, we have news of the industry. And boy, do we have some big news hot off the ticker. Right off the ticker, we have some guy named Justin Townsend has been named as the new head of the Tisch Design for Stage and Film, part of the NYU Tisch School of the Arts. And he will succeed our friend, costume designer Susan Helferty in August of this fall. I don't know if that's a congratulations or not. Usually when you're ahead of a program, it's more work than it's worth. This is actually a very prestigious move, and congratulations to Justin. You know, the other news, we're going to be talking about the Olympics coming up. Do you guys have any news for this week? No, I guess not.
No.
My son's Bar Mitzvah's on Saturday.
Oh, my God.
Oh, so you're going through with that.
News.
You were worried a couple weeks ago about the pandemic.
Yeah, so we're just going to go for it.
You're going to do an outdoor bar mitzvah or an indoor bar mitzvah?
No, it's going to be indoor, socially distanced, and masked.
Very nice. Are you serving gefilte fish?
No, that's Passover.
Oh, that's
right. We are serving bagels, though. No Jewish event is complete without a little nosh.
You got to have a nosh, right? Exactly. And he's doing his Haftorah?
He's doing the Haftorah. He's going to chant from the Torah. He's composed a song that he's going to play on guitar. It's going to be lovely.
You're kidding me. That is so cool. Is he going to sing it in Hebrew or is he going to sing it in English?
Yeah, it's in Hebrew.
Damn.
Is it from the Haftorah?
No, he actually has taken one of the songs that you sing in the Saturday morning service and created a new arrangement that he's going to play and sing.
Which song? Haidenu?
Ein Kelohenu?
Yes, Ein Kelohenu, one of my favorites. Okay.
There you go.
This could be a whole new version. We should get it on SoundCloud. We should get it on YouTube. And we should get it out there because pretty soon every temple is going to be singing your son's version of Ein Kelohenu. I am so stoked. Cool.
Thanks.
And there's an opening on Spotify now that Neil Young has pulled his music.
And it is very much in that Neil Young guy with a warbly voice and acoustic guitar sounding vein.
Oh, that's great.
We need to get a recording of this because I want to play it on the show.
Okay, we can do that.
Are you recording this live?
Yeah, I actually already have a recording of the song.
Oh, okay.
Because the cantor said he had to send it to her before she'd let him play it.
So make sure that they approved of it.
Make sure it was okay.
And the cantor was cool with it?
She was totally down with it.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's always good to avoid an awkward moment.
Right.
Okay, so which sect do you belong to? It's probably the liberal sect of, and that's the Reformed. Is that correct? I'm trying to remember.
I think we're sort of like in our hearts we're Reformed, but the shul we go to is conservative, but it's a super liberal conservative shul. Actually, it's the shul Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to go to.
Very cool. Very cool. You know, I grew up in a shul like that. It was somewhat progressive shul. And then when I came out here, I decided, hey, you know, I'm going to get back to my roots and go during the high holy days. And I went to a shul here that was like as conservative as you could be. It was so conservative. The men sat on one side and the women sat on the other.
Yeah, there's a wide range.
Bad news, right. I was there one day and I said, oh, not for me.
Although I know one woman who has a husband and 3 sons, and she says it's the one time of the week she gets a break from all the testosterone.
Yeah, there you go. That sounds like a good thing. Anyway, let's get started. Steve has the first question of the day.
Yes, it comes in from your neck of the woods, California, and it's Mary. And Mary asks, do you think we're rushing to scrap our tungsten fixtures in favor of LED too quickly? Mary, I've had a change of heart, and I think you're right. I think we're abandoning tungsten way too soon. And I think, as long as they're working and looking good, I'm going to keep using my tungsten fixtures. I'm still embracing LED technology, and I'm certainly embracing warm white LED technology. But yeah, I think, it's just another paintbrush. And if it's there and it's working and not causing problems, then yes, keep working with them. The writing's on the wall, though. I mean, I don't think tungsten is going to survive. But working light, yeah, don't put it in the dumpster yet. What about you, David?
Well, okay. First, I was going to say Steve's change of heart has probably come from our show from last week, where we were talking about refreshing your fixtures. And a lot of people don't have the money. If light comes out of them, then by God, use them, right? But anyway, it's so interesting because I had just heard a birdie this week about how some of these new LED fixtures that have been out for a while are failing a lot earlier than expected. And some of the manufacturers are seeing this happen, and they're trying to study why this is happening. But this is something that's starting to happen with some fixtures. So maybe it's quality control. Maybe, who knows what the problem is. But that was all I heard. So I may be just spreading a vicious rumor. I love LED, don't get me wrong. And I think LED is the way to go, especially now that they're getting really close with the with the extra red LED, so you get a much better skin rendition. So yeah, I love it. I love LED. But every now and then I'll still have to put some tungstens out front just to activate skin tones, just in case I need it, because you never know when you need it. So I'd say full speed ahead, but keep making some tungsten fixtures and don't throw them away. By all means, don't throw them away.
Well, before they figured out how to make a lovely laser projector, there were a lot of experiments with the world of LED projectors, especially in like smaller, more compact ones. And I actually remember writing an article for Live Design about this new range of Pico projectors. And I think that I said something to the effect of that because it's an LED lamp, that it has a practically unlimited life, lamp life. And somebody wrote in the next month, this was still when they had the monthly print magazine, saying it's not really unlimited. It's about 10,000 hours, which is significantly more than a traditional lamp, but it still has a life, a lifespan. And so in theory, I do wonder if we're finding out that some of these things are not lasting as long as we thought they would, because we go into it assuming it can be on forever. And then we find out that we've hit the wall of forever sooner than we thought because we didn't know yet.
I think that's what's happening. I agree with you. And Stan actually said this. Yeah, he predicted this many years ago on Light Talk. I think it was in one of our first episodes where we were talking about LED and the promises of LED. And Stan says, well, I'll be curious what happens 3 or 4 years down the road. And now that we're 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years down the road, where a lot of people are using these a lot, we're starting to see some breakdowns that people are a little surprised about.
The high-end user is always going to have the latest technology. And that's the problem. It seems to me that where the manufacturers are going is a light that in about 5 years is no longer relevant. Well, it's no longer relevant to the high-end user, but if you are a university or a regional theater or a small theater, it's very hard to pay $1,000 for a fixture that's only got 5 years of use for you until it's outdated or not working.
Yeah, I also wonder, part of the the idea that we may not yet have done enough testing to know how long they're going to last is, the environmental circumstances of, are you using it around a lot of haze and fog? Are you using it outdoors? Is it hot? Is it cold? Like, these lights are not going to react the same way that tungsten will in terms of how their survival rate with those different kinds of elements. And so that's another thing to factor in, that we may not yet know how those things impact the lifespan of the light.
I think you're going to see more lights with an IP65 rating for that
sure.
very reason. You don't have to worry about cleaning the interior of the light from these heavy fog environments.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in the projector world yet, but I'm hoping soon.
Yeah, I can imagine, because there's a lot of dust and everything else that sneaks into projectors.
Right.
But how do you do that and have it air cooled and not allow moisture?
There's a lot of companies that build these big fancy boxes. We used to call them coffins, and you can have them air chilled. But even then, it's sort of like, with all this projection mapping that's happening outside now, these projectors need to be protected, and they live inside this box. And then that has to be air cooled. It has to be cleaned out every now and then. Even the best, most modern projectors still, like, I think it's, it compromises some of its lifespan by putting it inside a box, but it's also still what you need to do so that it will survive outdoors.
Anne in Washington writes, can you suggest a way in which I can clearly communicate the lighting cue placements to the stage manager? Well, Anne, actually, we've talked about this a lot, but, when I was looking at this question again, I was thinking about really what are the most important ways of doing this? The obvious things, okay? You give the placement of the cues to the stage manager on a cue list. And I always give a preliminary cue list to the stage manager right after I've watched a room run of the show, either a run through or a room run if it's an opera, or if you're doing dance, you're watching a rehearsal and it's pretty close to the end. So you know that, 80% or 90% of the cues are going to be pretty much stay where they are. But make sure that you give them to the stage manager early enough, so that they have a chance to put them in their book, so that when you're working in tech rehearsal, they're not writing in the cues there, right? All they're doing is moving them a little bit here or there, here or there. Then, as far as notation, if you're doing theater and you're not doing a musical, you're not doing an opera or dance, you usually put them in the script on the line. Obviously, you have the page number, you have the character, and you have what the line is, and you have the word where that cue needs to be called. And then you say, this is where cue 10 goes. On this line, this is where cue 11 goes. Or it could be on a cross, on an actual movement of an actor. When the actor crosses stage left, you call cue 17, which will focus stage left and pull out stage right. Maybe halfway across the stage, or at 1/3, you call the cue. So that's another way of doing it. Or it could be on a sound cue. You call light cue 53 with sound cue AA or AC, or however they're numbering or lettering sound cues at the time. Or you call the projection cue, and then you wait a second, and then you call the light cue. Things like that. Now, as a designer, I don't like doing that, because what I would do is I would have the stage manager call the projection cue and the light cue at the same time, but put a delay of 1 second on the light cue. So the stage manager doesn't have to call all these numbers of cues. It's interesting how few lighting designers do that, especially students. I think that's a really important thing to teach a student how to do, is to manipulate the power of the board to make the stage manager's job a little easier and the lighting cues more precise. On a dance move, you could call out a dance move when this dancer crosses stage left. Also, on a scenic move, like sometimes you'll call the light cue when the drop is halfway out. Call cue 12 when the drop is at 3/4. Or when the wagon hits center stage, that's when you call cue 23. So sometimes you call it on a scenic move as well. It's really important that if you're doing opera or dance or musical, anything that has music in it, that the stage manager has a sense of music, not only knowing how to read and follow a score, because again, you could do it on music locations, page, system, measure, beat, but also sometimes you'll say, when this crescendo happens, when you feel it building about 3 seconds into the crescendo, that's where I want the cue to be called. So it's really important to have that type of common language with the stage manager when you're doing musicals and opera and dance and things like that. So yeah, that's another way of doing it. You can be very precise in a score. So like I said, it's done by page, by system number, going down the page, by measure, which are the measures that are bars that go across the page, and down to the beat. So if it's 4/4, you could be like on the third beat of this measure. So you could actually do that. Or you could say it's on the crescendo, or you could say that it's on the fermata or the repeat. Just make sure you know all your musical terms, and your stage manager should know them as well.
I totally agree with you. I think part of the practice here is also starting from a point of asking the stage manager, what is your style or preference for how you're going to put these in your book? You know, we have all seen the stage manager whip out their ruler and make a little arrow that ties it to a specific syllable in a word, or if they do it to a beat or something like that. So I think first and foremost, we want to find out what is the method this stage manager is going to use so that we can deliver this information to them in a way that they can efficiently and quickly absorb and process it too. Because the last thing we want is for our delivering the cues to the stage manager to take up time in the rehearsal that delays things. But I also think that part of what both lighting and video, almost more than any other discipline, end up having to do is figure out some of our cues by backtiming things. So we know, like, we want this cue to complete when the curtain hits the deck. So we have to figure out where in the start of that move that our cue has to start so that it completes in time for the thing to end. And it's really important, even when we can come up with things that we understand that it's tied to something that's painfully obvious, because we don't want to have to leave the subtlety window too wide open for the stage manager. Like, did they say 3/4 or 2/3 when it was in?
I just think back to that American classic, Tom Cruise's movie, Jerry Maguire. and he says, "Help me help you." And I
Exactly.
think you're right on the money. The more you can work with that stage manager before you walk into the space, understanding that things change and evolves and there's going to be erasures, the more you can help that stage manager prepare, the better he or she is going to be able to function during tech. If everything is coming at the stage manager 5 seconds before they have to do it and run it, particularly something that's terribly complex, you're going to spend a lot of time because they have to get their head around what they're doing. But if they can kind of be prepared and they know where the big, I'm hesitant to say trouble spots, but where the big traffic jams are coming, they're on top of it. And they've thought about the problem and they can turn to you and say, if we approached it this way, maybe it would clean everything up. And they're helping you.
Absolutely. And when you have those production meetings and you're with all the designers and the director and you're talking about transitions, make sure the stage manager's there, because the stage manager can answer a lot of questions that even the director may not be able to answer. Because the stage manager knows what's happening backstage. They know what props are moving. They know what wagons are moving, all that stuff. So it's really important that the stage manager is involved in that type of meeting.
Yeah, and a really good stage manager is not going to let you have that meeting without them being there anyway.
That's right. Owe that stage manager a lot of drinks.
Well, PJ in Nebraska says, the projection designer is slowly taking over tech. I feel like I'm watching a movie.
Oh, my God.
It's not that the work is bad, but rather it's overwhelming the rest of the work, both the designers and the actors. Any suggestions? Whew. This is an interesting topic, and I think we've all experienced this, not just with the projection designer, but
the lighting designer.
Any designer. Sometimes it's even an actor. But it's an interesting challenge, and I think that this is yet another scenario where your stage manager can be your friend. That the good stage manager can run that rehearsal in a way that is, like clockwork, like a train in Europe. And so I think that if you're finding that they take over tech in a way that it's becoming time consuming, then you can work with your stage manager to sort of help figure out a schedule that might be better for everyone. That might include them doing some of that work in a morning work call. The other interpretation of this question of, I feel like I'm watching a movie, could mean your projection designer is creating content that is overwhelming the rest of the show. And I think that's a deeper and more sensitive conversation that really you might want to have with the creative team and or director directly, where you say, I'm really trying to get this look across lighting wise, and it's not cutting through because I feel like it's just overwhelmed by the projections, and maybe there's a way we can pull back to just some of the essentials. Maybe we don't need all of that content, just enough to suggest something, so that there's more room for the scene to breathe. It's a very tricky, challenging thing. But I'm glad to hear that it's not that the work is bad. So what do you guys think?
I don't know. It's. I think it comes down to the director's responsibility to make sure that one design element's not overwhelming another. And it's up to the projection designer and lighting designer and sound designer sometimes to realize when their work is maybe taking too much focus. It's a little tricky. Again, we go back to Neil Jampoulos, why he liked doing everything, because he could go in and make that decision by himself and not have to worry about stepping on toes. What do you think, Steve?
Tech is already a tense time in the theater, and everybody from the director to the stage manager to the prop supervisor have an agenda and what they're trying to accomplish that day. So I think tech gets into a rhythm, and when that rhythm is kind of moving forward, it's easier to do your job. But when the rhythm is a start and a stop, it's like, I'm going to warm up, now I'm going to cool down, now I'm going to warm up. That's hard to get continuity. It's hard, for me at least, it's hard to stay on mission when I'm constantly starting and stopping. And I can't cut to the next cue because they need my cue up so they can see what's going on with the scene change or whatever. So I think that's the bigger question: is how do we utilize the time best as possible, because it's very brief in the theater. So it circles back to Zach. Maybe there are times that you can come in and work without every piece of the world there, particularly some of the things if the thunderstorm comes up instead of the farmhouse.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that a dirty little secret that I've noticed is that when this scenario happens, often it's because the designer is not prepared, and that they're throwing stuff up on the screen, auditioning content that should have been decided upon before we got into the theater. So that's another part of this too, is like, if you're prepared, then you're going to know that this is what this person's intent is, and you'll have had the discussion about, is this what all of our intent is before you get there? And B, you'll have had a say in how the flow is going to go, so you'll know in advance if this person is going to need extra time. Should we give them that work call? Should we delay everyone else coming in by 2 weeks? All those things. So I think that sometimes this does happen when a person is unprepared and they're auditioning content on the spot.
Well, it's true of lighting designers too. All of a sudden they put a moving light in the air and they haven't built a color palette. And there are 200 different blues that light can make. And they're auditioning those 200 colors of blue. And instead of just, the director says, I just need a nice primary blue. And instead of going to the menu and bringing up a primary blue, they say, well, let me mix that for you. And all of a sudden, hours have gone by while we're auditioning colors, or that's a little too blue, that's not blue enough. You're right. You have to be kind of prepared and have some decisions made, right or wrong. you need some decisions before you step into tech. It's not a good time for discovery, particularly with the technology we have today, because the possibilities are almost limitless.
Right, and to have the wisdom to know for yourself, because the flip side is if no one else is doing this, then you might be the person that's the hijacking the rehearsal. To have that wisdom to know this is something I should work on during a break, or I should work on tomorrow. I'm taking up other people's time.
And on the other hand, you need to know when it works and walk away from it. I'm going to tell you a story without revealing the director or the place, but I was doing a show several years ago at a very prestigious opera house. And I had worked with this director months and months and months before on how to get this atmosphere working for this particular act. And I knew that I was going to be able to light this act with like 4 lights. That was it. But it was very bold lighting. The lighting was extremely bold and expressionistic. And the director agreed with me. Yeah, let's do this. We set up the lights and we lit it and it looked great. And it was about, I don't know, we got about an hour and a half and we wrote all the cues. And then it was like, okay, this is act 2. What do we do now? And the director said, no, we have 4 more days to do this. Let's try other things. And I turned to the board op and I said, you save this and give me a copy of it. I spent 4 more days in the theater with this director, going through all these different things. And finally, the director at the end said, you know, I liked what we did originally. Do you still have it? And I said, of course. Just because you have the time doesn't mean you have to use it. Once you like it, then give it to the sound designer, give it to the stagehands. Believe me, they have enough to do.
Absolutely. It's the same thing that we have learned as musicians too. You know, how many times have you recorded take after take, and then you just use the first take?
You know, Roy Acuff was completely the opposite. When he did the album with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Will the Circle Be Unbroken, his philosophy was get it right on the first take, because every take you lose a little something vocally.
It's true. It's true. So you are listening to Light Talk, and today Light Talk is sponsored by
the member states of the European Union. Is your life in a flux? The pandemic will not last forever. What you need is to plan a nice getaway destination. The member states of the EU suggest you visit the city of Rozencourt in Ohm. That's right. Take your next vacation there and relax by Triac Lake, bike the Alsac Mountains, or visit the rustic village of Amphere. Want a little action for the whole family? Then head to the Sine Wave Water Park. Enjoy the beauty of the northern arc lights in the winter sky. Then afterwards, take any ground bus to the old town and enjoy a drink at the Bus Bar Inn. Rozencourt, not so far away.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sounds of those rabid ducks tells us that once again it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about the Winter Olympics Opening Ceremonies. That's right. This is the Winter Olympics Opening Ceremonies show. We do it like once every 4 years. I don't know about you guys, but I watched this and I was fortunate because they rebroadcast the previous day's sports and the ceremonies in 4K. So I'm able to like record it. It happens in the middle of the night. And I got to see this in 4K. And I must say it was quite stunning.
I smell a contest.
Watch
the Olympics with David coming in 4 years.
But you have to live in LA to win. But all I could say is that this Olympics was everything the Tokyo opening ceremonies was not. That was, what, a year and a half ago. Truly spectacular design, especially the projections like we talked about earlier. Even the overwhelming visual power of the projections, you could still see the performers perfectly. You could see everyone who come out. When they did close-ups, you could see people, no shadows in the eyes, beautifully lit, beautifully balanced, you know, with the projection levels and the lighting levels was perfect. It really was. I didn't see one flaw. It was beautifully balanced. And especially when you have so much projections and such powerful tiles, because those are really powerful tiles. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, they're probably all running at 5%.
Exactly. You could see everybody perfectly. This was designed by world-renowned Chinese filmmaker Zhang Yimou, and I'm sure I'm unfortunately probably butchering his name. He played the master of ceremonies for the second time, becoming the first person to direct 2 opening ceremonies in the same city. Zhang was also the mastermind behind the spectacular Beijing 2008 opening ceremony, which was pretty cool. The center stage within the venue comprised of, hold on to your seats, Zach, 11,600 square meters of high-definition LED tiles.
That's a lot.
Which imitated a crystal-clear ice surface throughout the ceremony. Zhang further used high technology to bring his creation into existence through artificial intelligence using live motion capture technology. The theme of this year's ceremony was called Together for a Shared Future, and there were a lot of elements involved here, and I think we're just going to start talking about them. So guys, what did you think?
It was great. I mean, it was everything that Tokyo was not. And you bring up a good point. There's a lot of light coming off those panels that they're standing on. So that was a huge challenge for everybody to control that. It was in that opening, the green stripy
LED
thing with the guys holding the wands in their hand. That was that's pretty impressive. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. And I will say that it was like not just that it was beautifully lit and the balance was so great, but that it was perfectly lit and choreographed for the camera. And these kinds of events, I think there's always the challenge, probably less so now in the time of COVID, but of how do we create this experience that works for the audience who's there live and works for the camera. So this definitely was designed, and I'm sure lots of hours went into making sure that it was going to be transmitted beautifully in the camera, because there were times where I was just like, that can't be practical. That can't be real. It's got to be tweaked in post. But I think that it was all in the camera.
Yeah, because as you mentioned earlier, Zach, privately before we started, that a lot of this video content was forced perspective. I mean, it was done in perspective that would only really work for a very small section of this audience when you think about it. You know, if you're off by about 20, 30 degrees, all of a sudden that perspective is not working. But, you know, it was just amazingly composed. It really was. There
was that really clever reveal of the Olympic logo in ice when the screen actually moved down and it gave the illusion that it was being carved in front of you.
Yep. Yeah,
that was really
giant
fun.
Ice block, that beautiful ice block. All that was, and the colors. Oh my God, the color compositions were just so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned earlier, that river, that flowing waterfall coming down, and then that ice block comes up from underneath, and then all the lasers supposedly carving out all those animated figures, which was just beautiful.
The skaters when they were skating around and it's like clearing the snow in their path.
They were using some sort of a black tracks type of technology there. If you notice on some of the close-ups going around the rink, there were all these moving lights on the deck. They were all pointed up, right? And I'm thinking, what are these moving lights doing? Well, they were actually lighting the underside of the ceiling of the Bird's Nest, which was the big stadium. They call it the Bird's Nest. And they were lighting the underside of the ceiling. And most of those of the moving lights were either backlighting the audience, which gave this beautiful, beautiful dimensionality of foreground and background. Again, unlike Tokyo, and something you said, Zach, the camera angles, the camera choreography had to be perfect, or else you know, you get reflection off those tiles. Sometimes it looks pretty damn ugly. And there was very little of that. Have you worked on a show like that, Zach, where you had to consider the video? Because you said, you know, who do you light it for? The 60,000, you know, that are in the stadium? Or do you light it for the, 200 million who are watching it?
I mean, I haven't worked on something on that level, but I've done some concerts where we are definitely thinking about how it looks to the audience, how it looks if it's being filmed at that time. And then the other thing you have to think about is how is it going to look when somebody takes a picture and puts it on Twitter? Because like in the touring concert world, you know, one bad video on Twitter can kill your concert. So you have to even think about that kind of stuff. It's a big challenge, but I think that technologically we've gotten to a point now where there are pieces of equipment that are pre-designed to work harmoniously in that sort of TV realm. I mean, in the early days of LED, there was always the challenge to find, you know, to have the same refresh rate, so you didn't get like a strobing effect when the camera was shooting at 24 or 30 frames a second and the LEDs were not refreshing at that same frame rate. You know, and at this point now, the technology is so far advanced that, you know, it's the stuff that they're standing on is the same as your 4K TV.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about the stuff they're standing on, because if you are lighting the athletes with some moving lights and let's say they're, you know, ringing around the stadium, get them in 360 degrees. What is the reflection like on these tiles? Because I'm noticing less and less reflection problems now.
My guess is that they applied some kind of surface to them that maybe was even a little bit frosted or matte at least, because part of what you get from that, aside from it cutting the reflection, is that it sort of smooths out the image even further. You know, even as recently as like 5 years ago, we used to experiment on Broadway with putting an RP screen in front of LED tiles to kind of blur them a little bit to get more like creaminess like you'd see in projections. But I think that at this point now, you know, there's all kinds of surfaces, because I think whatever was applied to these tiles is not something off the shelf, because it has to be something that you can rollerblade on too.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm sure that a lot of thought went into choosing something that was going to have the clarity of the image, but not the reflectivity, but also not obscure it for the camera as well. Because the other part of that is however many thousands of tiles that are there all have to have the same color balance. And, you know, not just balancing it electronically, but then worrying about, is the surface that I'm applying to this, my deck, so to speak, also going to change the color balance in any way? And how do I make sure that everything is balanced across everything?
Yeah. So, Steve, you mentioned earlier, again, off air, how well presented and composed the show was compared to other Olympics.
Well, it was a tighter show. They trimmed some time off of it. Who knows for what reason, but it didn't seem skimpy while you were watching it. You know, the opening ceremonies over the last 12, 15 years, less and less people are watching them. So I'm not sure what's up with that. So viewer audience seems to keep slipping a little bit. You know, the thing I noticed about this, you know, and no matter how beautiful it was, and I agree that it was, when I look at this and I look at what happened in Tokyo, and I don't think this happened with the Summer Olympics in Beijing. I felt differently about that one. It feels to me like the human being is becoming more and more reduced on these stages. That there's this huge image coming at us, and the people are very small and insignificant. So I don't know. That's just something I got from as I watched it. There was less humanity about it. Certainly spectacle, certainly beautiful, certainly everything that you guys are saying is true, but the human being seemed missing from the equation.
I don't disagree. I think in some ways the human beings in this production became, you know, in some cases they were like part of the automated scenery, you know, when they did the thing with the LED reeds, but in many ways, because of the size and the spectacle, it's like they become pixels in a way. So it's sort of like only when they show the close-up of the people doing the ice skating, for instance, do you really get the emotional impact from that. When you see the big wide shot, it almost looks like it's a paintbrush moving, and the people become part of the content in a way that does kind of remove some of that humanity.
It totally blew me away. You were talking earlier about that spot where they were skating across, and there was some sort of interactive video happening with their skates. Again, all that was so crisp, and all the lettering, because they did a lot of graphics. They did a lot of lettering and a lot of graphics, was crystal clear. You could only get that with tiles. Is that correct? Are there projectors now that from that distance can give you that clarity?
I mean, there are, but the issue you'd run into in a situation like that is unless you could dig a giant hole underneath and do rear projection from below, right, the people are going to make shadows and the lights are going to make shadows, and that would not be pleasing on TV.
As demonstrated 18 months ago in Tokyo.
There you go. Right. I mean, you see it anytime you see ice skating on TV where there's a spotlight that they have a shadow, like Peter Pan. But I think that to make these effects with the ice and the water and everything believable on TV, it really could only be executed the way it was.
Yep. Well, I must say, kudos to everyone involved in this one. It was just a beautiful, beautiful work. And I can't wait to see the closing ceremonies.
And I loved the little fireworks bit at the end, too. I'm a sucker for fireworks. And to have those snowflakes and then the Olympic rings in fireworks is, it was fun.
It was fun. I love that. I loved all the fireworks. Again, in the beginning when they blew the dandelion leaves and or buds, they went up that vertical screen and then out the roof, and all the fireworks showing the dandelions. It was just a great integration of design ideas. Beautifully done.
It was nice to have a little break from drones.
Oh, thank God. No drones in this show. That's right. Amazing. No drones. It's enough drones. No drones, then no more Imagine. Okay. Well, Steve has our last question of the day.
Russell in Dallas writes, I was working a concert and I heard one of the crew say, "It's time to feed the fish." What was that all about? Well, rock and roll has its own language. I mean, even the term rock and roll, that was originated by Alan Freed, the DJ. His ashes were recently removed from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Why?
And the reason given was that was like the biggest question that happened every day at the Rock and Roll Museum. It was like, What's this? What's this sitting here? And his son said, "Let's just get Dad's ashes out of there." But
that's terrible.
Even the term rock and roll, it means to get ready, to get going. Country tried this for a while. When country started making their move into kind of more rock and roll-ish type of music, they actually coined the phrase "drunk and roll." And drunk and roll did not sound so good, so they got rid of that pretty fast. But you kind of get the sense of what they're after, these, rock and roll-y kind of crying the beer songs. I was looking at a phrase, grab your axe and go for a ride. I mean, there you go. Most people will tell you an axe is a guitar, and if you go for a ride, that means that's the guitar solo about to happen. Maybe you drop a clam. And there's a train wreck.
Drop a clam? What does that mean?
Drop a clam. That means somebody played a bad note.
That's right.
Clam.
And in a train wreck, now the band is completely out of sync. They're just totally lost on stage, and they're trying to get out of it.
I know train wreck. I've experienced many on stage.
Sure.
So to answer your question, it's time to feed the fish. And believe it or not, that term is used when the guitar player starts throwing picks at the audience. He's feeding the fish with picks. There you go.
Speaking of rock and roll, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, Amazon Prime Music, and just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to the podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flock, Flare, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Washington, D.C., Long Beach, and just left of the Chisholm Trail.
And tune in next week when we welcome multi-Emmy Award-winning lighting designer Dennis Size to Light Talk.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye-bye.
Toodles.